It's time to talk about the very best comic books released the very first week of 2023, and I must say, we are not off to a very good start. In fact, I had a hard time finding comic books to recommend, but we did find 5 diamonds in the rough, and here to talk to me about that is Gabe from Weird Science DC, as well as Comical Opinions. How you doing, Gabe?
Happy holidays, happy New Year, Merry Christmas, and everything in between. Thank you for having me, Wes. I'm glad to talk with you about this.
They did not bring the heat. Marvel, DC, the indie books didn't really bring their best A game for this week, but we did find some stuff starting out with the indie comics. I'm personally going to recommend Stillwater number 17 from Image. Chip Zdarsky, Ramon Perez on this one. I do think this series is a little too slow paced. It should have probably wrapped up by issue number 10. Not the most original idea in the world, Tuck Everlasting, but with a bunch of kids that actually want to kill people. But we are getting to the conclusion, and I will say this, Chip Zdarsky and Ramon Perez in this series, specifically this issue, really do build up the tension. We've got a civil war brewing between Stillwater and Coldwater, I think that's the name of it, as they're about to have a big throwdown over this kid Galen and his rule of law. We have the kids in charge, we got the Marines stepping in, and all hell is breaking loose in this. And if you like Ramon Perez art, you're going to love the way this comic book looks.
Yeah, for anyone who's not familiar with Stillwater, it's basically, just as you said, Tuck Everlasting. It's a town where nobody ages and nobody can ever die. So that's not an original concept, and as you pointed out, it really is a very slow simmer. It's not even a burn. But the beauty of that series is the strong character work. And we have a little kid who's now effectively an adult in his mind, and he's turned into a kind of a little Hitler. I mean, that leads to some really strange, weird, bizarre, surreal circumstances. We have a little kid that's just gone crazy and trying to run the town into a ground. So it's got some interesting ideas in it, even though it might not be the most original idea in the world.
Yeah, I just wish that they had condensed it a little bit. I don't know that it should be going upwards of 20 issues for one story, but definitely check that one out if you're looking for something interesting on the indie scenes. You're going to make a couple of recommendations I wasn't even aware of. First up, Atonement Bell number 2 from Red 5 Comics. Jim Oosley, not to be confused with Jim Owsley, and Tyler Ruff on art. What the hell is this thing about?
Well, the Atonement Bell is about a boy and his mother who go to visit their relatives in the city, and they wind up attending their church. And what the boy finds out is that the church has been under the curse of a coven of witches for the past couple centuries, and now the curse has come for him as the next chosen one to be sacrificed in the name of atonement for how the coven was killed and destroyed and abused by settlers way back when. So it's got a lot of great family drama because a lot of it is about the family relationships and how they sort of band together when dark supernatural forces come after them. But the character development is great. The atmosphere is fantastic. And the whole idea is just super original. I mean, we see stuff about witches and supernatural all the time. I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like this. So the first issue grabbed me with the great character development. The second issue really delves into the history, and you get some of the gore and the magic and everything that's going on around it. And I like that quite a lot. So if you like horror and witches in particular, this is going to be one for you.
Red 5 Comics is not a publisher every comic book shop is going to hold, so you might need to go out there and search for it. But if you like the occult and witches and stuff like that, it sounds like it's got a pretty strong premise. Another comic book that you're going to recommend, and I will say this, I think that the indies are doing much better crossovers right now than DC or Marvel. When you think of DC and Marvel, that's kind of like their bread and butter, but Dynamite, Boom, a lot of them are doing better crossovers, specifically Vampirella versus Red Sonja number 3 from Dynamite this week. Dan Abnett, Alessandro Rinaldi on art here. Dan Abnett knows how to write superhero comic books, and he feels right at home with these heroic female characters.
That's right. And as much as we give DC and Marvel grief about the multiverse and big event stuff, this comic and this series in particular feels like a big event comic that spans the multiverse. Now, the reason why this one works out much better than the way DC or Marvel does it is because they have alternate Earths, but they don't have the same people and doppelgangers on all the alternate Earths. So one character comes from one Earth, the other one comes from a different Earth, and they all come together to find out what's going on with the world that's housed, that's the home for Black Terror, which is a public domain pulp character that a lot of people might be familiar with. So supernatural forces, of which the project is sort of in denial that supernatural forces actually exist, has come to destroy that world, and that threat seems to be spreading to the other Earths, and the two forces, both of magic and of science, have to band together to try and defeat the threat that's coming. I really liked it a lot. The character work is great, dialogue pacing, the story feels big, and we find out there's a little bit of a mystery that means that the project was involved in the threat way back when. I'm not going to spoil it, but this feels like a big crisis level event, and it's much better than anything DC or Marvel is putting out right now.
So if you're looking for a big crossover, or maybe like pulpy kind of stories, classic characters, definitely go check out Dynamite. They're doing a lot of great stuff. Obviously, the big Vampirella Red Sonja crossover being one of them. The last indie comic book that we're going to talk about, really Ablaze Comics, came out of nowhere for me in 2022, taking great European comics, translating them, releasing them on the U.S. market, doing the best Conan comics that you were going to find, some really cool independent stuff. This year, they've started out strong. Children of the Black Sun #1, Dario Ciccio, Letizia Cadonci on art on this one. What's going on here? It looks like a pretty damn dark series.
It is very dark, and if you read the premise and you read the first couple pages of the first issue, it'll sound very familiar. It reads like an updated, refreshed, repackaged, but still very entertaining version of Children of the Dam or Village of the Damned. There's two films, but it's very similar, where you had this big sort of celestial event that blocked out the sun several years in the past, and the children that were born or conceived during that day, now they're born into teenagers, and they're creepy weird. They've got the strange hair, strange eyes, and there's some kind of connection that's banding them together for some terrifying change that's putting everybody on edge. The atmosphere is what really sells it. The kids are creepy. The mood of tension, like everybody thinks a third event or fourth event is about to happen, and all hell is about to break loose. Love this first issue a lot. I was very surprised about how it turned out.
I'm not surprised, because it is Ablaze, and they seem to have a very good eye for stories that will translate very well to U.S. audiences. I'm definitely going to check that one out. Unfortunately, I didn't get a gainer at that one. I was too busy reading a lot of bad Marvel and DC comics this week. I've only got the one recommendation from the big two. It's going to come from Marvel Comics, Joe Fixit #1, Peter David Yildari Sinar on art on this one. I absolutely love this comic book. This is my biggest recommendation of the week. We've got Joe Fixit, a fixture in Las Vegas, working for one of the big crime bosses there, held up in a casino, and something that would kind of make sense within the Marvel Comics universe happens. Kingpin gets word of what's going on, that they've cleaned out Las Vegas, that they're the #1 game in town, and he's going to go there and send them a message. And we get this really great interaction between Joe Fixit and Kingpin. Let's just say Kingpin was not expecting the dose that he got from Joe Fixit in this one. I really love that moment. I thought the execution was really fun. We also get Peter Parker Spider-Man added in here. I'm not really sure why. I don't know that it adds a whole lot, other than if you like Spider-Man, it's pretty cool. But I really like the premise. And while this isn't quite as good as Maestro for me, which I absolutely love, I think this has got a lot of potential to do some really cool stuff.
Yeah, this is a good, fun, straight up, let's get some characters together and see how they interact type of issue. Peter Parker's presence during the middle of the confrontation between Kingpin and Joe Fixit is a little convenient, doesn't quite hold up, but it's all about putting Kingpin against Joe Fixit. And in probably one of the greatest fights between two big, strong characters, where Joe Fixit makes Kingpin say uncle, and he forces him to say uncle. I mean, just those pages alone are worth it. In French. And then he was going to do some other stuff before he got stopped by his boss. Yeah, he makes him go through the whole gamut. So it was a lot of fun just for that. So if you're just looking for some, simple fun with, two big bruisers going at it, this is going to be a good pick for you.
Absolutely. That was the best thing that the big two released this week. I thought we would be talking about Batman 131, but we don't have anything to recommend from DC Comics. I didn't really read anything from them that stood out in a good, positive way this week.
It was a short week for DC, and the stuff that they offered was underwhelming, to say the least.
Obviously, Gabe and I have already talked about that yesterday here on the channel, but those are our recommendations of the week. I do want to say thank you very much to Gabe. Do you have any final words?
No, I mean, just go read more comics. And if you feel like the DC, Marvel, big two are letting you down, look at the other publishers. There's stuff out there. You just got to look a little harder for it. But there is some good stuff out there if you're willing to put in the effort to find it.
I imagine some of you were also expecting to hear about Batman 131 in the Best of the Week segment. It's been, basically a staple of the program since Chip Zdarsky took over, but it took a real big decline this week. Gabe and I talked it all out, explained why we didn't really like this new direction for Chip Zdarsky and Batman. It just really feels like the same thing we've been reading about for about 2 years. If you don't see the video here, there's also a link in the video description.